in a nation shaped by struggle, resilience, and change. A new generation is rising. Across the streets, campuses, and digital spaces of Nepal, Generation Z is questioning power, challenging silence, and redefining leadership. This is not just protest, it is a movement for accountability, opportunity, and a future worth staying for. You're watching Kiyo Documentary, where today we explore the Gen Z protests and the rise of youth leadership in Nepal. Nepal today stands at a historic crossroads. As we approach the Falgun election, the nation is not only choosing representatives, but deciding the direction of its future. This future is increasingly being shaped by a new generation, Generation Z, born in the age of digital connectivity, political transition, and economic uncertainty. Gen Z is no longer silent or passive. Across Nepal, young people are rising, questioning old systems, challenging traditional power structures, and demanding accountability. Their protests are not acts of chaos. They are expressions of hope, frustration, and a deep desire for transformation. For decades, Nepali politics has been dominated by the same faces, the same families, and the same promises. Despite political changes, from monarchy to democracy to federalism, many fundamental problems remain unresolved. Corruption persists, unemployment continues to rise, and public trust in institutions has steadily declined. Generation Z has grown up witnessing these failures. Unlike previous generations, they are not willing to accept excuses. They ask difficult questions and demand real answers. Their protests reflect not rebellion, but awareness. Gen Z protests in Nepal are different from the movements of the past. They are decentralized, leaderless at times, and powered by social media. Platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X have become tools for political education and mobilization. A single video exposing injustice can reach millions within hours. A hashtag can become a movement. This digital activism has allowed youth from rural villages to urban centers to connect, organize, and speak with one voice. These protests represent a shift from fear to fearlessness. The issues driving Gen Z to the streets are deeply rooted in everyday reality. Unemployment remains one of the biggest challenges facing Nepali youth. Thousands of educated young people are forced to leave the country every year in search of opportunity. Those who stay often face low wages, unstable jobs, or political favoritism. Gen Z protests ask a simple but powerful question. Why must the youth leave Nepal to survive? This question strikes at the heart of national policy failure. Another major reason for youth protest is corruption. Gen Z has grown up seeing corruption normalized in politics and bureaucracy. They see development budgets disappear, public services fail, and powerful individuals escape accountability. This generation is more informed and less tolerant of injustice. They understand that corruption steals not only money, but also opportunity, dignity, and future. Their demand is clear: transparency, rule of law, and equal justice. Education is also a central concern. Despite promises of reform, Nepal's education system continues to produce graduates without skills relevant to the job market. Gen Z students protest not just for degrees, but for quality education, innovation, and research opportunities. They want an education system that prepares them to build Nepal, not abandon it. These protests represent a demand for long-term national planning rather than short-term political gain. Alongside protest, we are witnessing the rise of youth leadership in Nepal. This is one of the most hopeful developments in recent years. Young leaders are emerging not only within political parties, but also outside traditional structures. They come from student movements, civil society, social entrepreneurship, and grassroots activism. These leaders speak the language of the people, understand modern challenges, and use technology to connect directly with citizens. Youth leadership represents a break from identity politics and patronage systems. Many young leaders focus on issues rather than ideology. They speak about governance, accountability, environment, mental health, and economic opportunity. This approach resonates strongly with Gen Z voters who are tired of political slogans and empty nationalism. They want measurable progress and honest leadership. The Falgun election is therefore not just a routine democratic event. It is a test of whether Nepal is ready to trust its youth. Gen Z is not asking to replace experience with inexperience. They are asking for inclusion, mentorship, and shared responsibility. They believe that leadership should be earned through integrity and competence, not inherited through family or party loyalty. Critics often label Gen Z protests as immature or unrealistic. However, history shows that meaningful change has always come from young voices. Nepal's own democratic movements were driven by students and youth. What is different today is that Gen Z combines passion with information. They research policies, analyze data, and compare Nepal with other nations. Their demands are grounded in global standards and local realities. Youth leadership also brings new priorities to national politics. Climate change, for example, is a major concern for Gen Z Nepal. One of the countries most vulnerable to climate disasters cannot afford to ignore environmental policy. Young leaders emphasize sustainable development, renewable energy, and disaster preparedness. They understand that economic growth without environmental protection is not true progress. Mental health is another issue finally receiving attention because of youth activism. Gen Z speaks openly about stress, anxiety, and social pressure topics long ignored in Nepali society. Their advocacy is pushing institutions to recognize mental health as a public concern, not a personal weakness. This shift reflects a more humane and inclusive vision of development. As we move toward the Falgun election, the role of Gen Z voters becomes crucial. This generation represents a significant portion of the electorate. Their participation can reshape electoral outcomes. Voting for Gen Z is not just a right, but a responsibility. Protest without participation is incomplete. True change requires engagement within the democratic process. The rise of youth leadership does not mean rejecting older generations. It means building a bridge between experience and innovation. Nepal needs the wisdom of elders and the energy of youth working together. Gen Z leaders often emphasize collaboration rather than confrontation. Their goal is not to destroy institutions, but to reform them. In conclusion, Gen Z protests and the rise of youth leadership represent a turning point in Nepal's political journey. They signal a shift from silence to voice, from frustration to action, and from hopelessness to possibility. The Falgun election offers Nepal a chance to embrace this transformation. The question before us is simple but profound. Will we listen to our youth, or will we once again ignore the future? Nepal's future is watching. Its youth are ready. The time for meaningful change is now. The voice of Nepal's youth is no longer distant or ignored. It is present, powerful, and shaping the nation's political future. As the Falgun election approaches, the choices made today will define generations tomorrow. The question remains, will the system change, or will the youth change the system? This is Kiyo Documentary. Thank you for watching.